So today we will be talking about the pedigree in the TV show Grey's Anatomy. So before we start talking about the pedigree itself, I want to talk about the inheritance patterns that we'll be looking at. So autosomal recessive is when males and females have the same chance of expressing the trait, and they only express the trait if you're homozygous recessive, little b. These traits can skip generations. For autosomal dominant, it is similar to autosomal recessive. Males and females have the same likelihood of expressing the trait, and you can express this trait through homozygous dominant, big B, or heterozygous, big B. Y-linked states that the Y chromosome carries a trait, therefore all males in the pedigree will carry the allele for the trait. For X-linked dominant, females are homozygous dominant for the trait X big B, and males can be dominant or recessive for the trait on their X chromosome, X big BY or X little by. This pattern of inheritance means that the X chromosome carries the alleles for the trait. For X-linked recessive, similar to X-linked dominant, females with the trait are homozygous recessive, X little b, and males can either be dominant or recessive for the trait on their X chromosome as shown above. This inheritance pattern is consistent with X chromosomes carrying alleles against the trait. So now we'll take a look at generation 1. We have Richard Weber, Ellis Gray, Thatcher Gray, and Susan Gray. Ellis Gray and Thatcher Gray were married. Richard Weber and Ellis Gray had a child, and Thatcher Gray and Susan Gray had a child as well. So Margaret Maggie Pierce is the child of Ellis Gray and Richard Weber. Meredith Gray is the child of Thatcher Gray and Ellis Gray, and she married Derek Shepard. And then Lexi Gray is the child of Susan Gray and Thatcher Gray. For generation 3, we have the children of Derek Shepard and Meredith Gray, who are Zola Gray Shepard, who was adopted, Derek Bailey Gray Shepard, and Ellis Gray Shepard. So now we have the pedigree for blue eyes, and now we'll start talking about the inheritance patterns. So for autosomal recessive, you make sure that all of the people that have the trait are represented as little b, and then everyone else that is not shaded is dominant for the trait. So this inheritance pattern is actually consistent with our pedigree. For autosomal dominance, you do the opposite. So all the people that are shaded have dominant for the trait, and then all the people that are not shaded are recessive for the trait. This inheritance pattern is also consistent. For X-linked dominance, we have all of the shaded people as dominant for the trait, so X big BY or X big B. This inheritance pattern is actually inconsistent because Lexi Gray would need to receive a little b from her father and a little b from her mother, and she receives a big B from her father and a little b from her mother. So for X-linked recessive, this pattern is also consistent. You would make sure that all the shaded ones are X little b, or X little by, and this inheritance pattern is consistent with our pedigree. So for Y-linked, you see that all the males in the pedigree would be dominant for the trait on their Y chromosome, and Richard Weber is not dominant for that trait, which means that Y-linked is not consistent with this pedigree. And then here are my references.